Ambassador Kim Yuna walked through the great doors of the Galactic Council chamber with her head held high. The room was massive. It could hold thousands of beings from across the stars. Giant screens floated in the air, showing the faces of delegates who attended from distant worlds. The ceiling was made of glass, and through it she could see the endless darkness of space filled with bright stars. She had been to this chamber many times before. Every time she felt the same cold feeling in her chest. It was not fear, it was something worse. It was the feeling of being small in a room full of giants who looked down at her. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 60 years ago. In the eyes of species who had traveled between stars for thousands of years, humans were like babies who had just learned to walk. They smiled at humans the way adults smile at children who say something foolish. They tolerated humans. They did not respect them. Yuna took her seat in the human section. It was placed at the far edge of the chamber near the back. The important species sat near the center, where their voices carried weight. Humans sat where their voices were easy to ignore. The session began with the usual reports: trade numbers, border disputes, resource agreements. Yuna listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. Then High Speaker Veltus of the Moran Dominion stood to speak, and the room fell silent. Veltus was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. His people were one of the oldest in the galaxy. They believed this made them better than everyone else. Veltus believed it more than most. I wish to bring forward a motion, Veltus said. His voice was smooth like oil. It concerns the voting rights of the human delegation. Yuna felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. She had learned long ago never to show emotion in this room. Emotion was weakness, and weakness was something these beings loved to attack. The humans have been members of this council for 60 years, Veltus continued. In that time, they have contributed little of value. Their technology remains primitive. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. They struggle to maintain peace even within their own small territory. Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. Yuna did not move. I propose that we reduce human voting rights by half until they can demonstrate that they deserve a full voice in galactic affairs. The laughter grew louder. Delegate Core of the Bether Empire stood up, his massive green body shaking with amusement. Perhaps we should give them picture books instead of policy documents, he said. They might understand those better. The chamber erupted in laughter. Hundreds of alien voices joined together in mockery. Some delegates did not laugh. They looked uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up. None of them defended humanity. Chancellor Ezrin, the leader of the council, raised a hand for silence. She was ancient, her gray skin wrinkled with age, her eyes tired but sharp. Let us hear from the human delegation before we vote, she said. Ambassador Kim, do you wish to respond? Yuna stood slowly. She looked around the chamber at all the faces watching her. Some were curious. Most were amused. A few were openly hostile. I do wish to respond, Yuna said. Her voice was steady. High Speaker V. Veltus speaks of our primitive technology. He speaks of our weakness. He speaks of our failures, but he does not speak of the 14 times human engineers saved Moran cargo ships from reactor failures. He does not speak of the human doctors who stopped the plague on Beleli Prime when their own doctors could not. He does not speak of the human peacekeepers who died protecting borders that were not their own. Laughter had stopped. The room was quiet. Now came to this council seeking friendship. Yuna continued, we came seeking partnership. We came seeking respect, not because we demanded it, but because we believed we had earned it. She paused, looking directly at Veltus. We were wrong, Kor snorted, pretty words from a pretty face, but words do not change facts. Humans are children playing with fire. One day you will burn yourselves and you will come crying to us for help. And GT, more laughter followed. This time it was cruel. It was meant to hurt. Chancellor Ezrin shook her head slowly. Ambassador Kim, I understand your frustration, but the council must consider the greater good. Perhaps when your species learns to crawl properly, you may speak at the adults' table. The words hit Yuna like a physical blow. For a moment she said nothing. She simply stood there alone, surrounded by beings who saw her as nothing more than a joke. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who had just made a decision that would change everything. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication device. She pressed a single button and spoke 3 words in a clear, calm voice. Begin. Protocol Sunrise. Cross the galaxy on ships and stations and distant worlds. Every human heard those words. They all knew what they meant. Years of planning, years of waiting, years of being laughed at and pushed aside and treated like dirt. It was all about to end. In the council chamber, the other human delegates stood up from their seats. They did not speak. They did not argue. They simply walked toward the exits one by one in perfect silence. Yuna was the last to leave. She stopped at the door and turned back to look at the chamber. Thousands of eyes stared at her in confusion. You called us children, she said softly. You will soon learn how wrong you were. She walked out and the doors closed behind her. Chancellor Ezin looked at Veltus. What just happened? Veltus laughed nervously. Nothing. Humans are dramatic. They will come back tomorrow with apologies and tears, but deep in his chest, Veltus felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt afraid, and he did not know why. The emergency meeting room in Seoul was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. They sat around a long table made of dark wood, their faces lit by the blue glow of holographic screens. Outside the windows, the city stretched into the night, millions of lights shining like stars on the ground. Admiral Park TJO stood at the head of the table. He was 63 years old with gray hair cut short and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. He had fought in 3 wars. He had buried friends and enemies alike. Nothing surprised him anymore, but tonight there was fire in his eyes. You all know why we are here, he said. His voice was low and calm. Ambassador Kim activated protocol Sunrise 4 hours ago. The council has not yet realized what this means. We have a small window of time to act before they understand what is happening. General Li Dong nodded slowly. He was a large man with broad shoulders and hands that could crush metal. The military is ready. All ships have been recalled. Our forces will be back in Earth space within 36 hours. And GT, what about the treaties? Asked Dr. Choi Hannah. She was the youngest person In the room barely 40, but her mind was sharper than anyone else's. She had spent 20 years building weapons that the galaxy did not know existed. Admiral TJO turned to look at the wall of screens. Behind him, each screen showed a different document: trade agreements, defense pacts, resource sharing, contract, scientific exchange programs. There were thousands of them. We had them all, he said simply, every single one. Tonight, the room was silent for a moment. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity had spent 60 years building relationships with alien civilizations. They had worked hard to be accepted. They had swallowed their pride again and again, hoping that one day things would be different. That hope was dead. Now at exactly midnight, Earth Standard Time, humanity transmitted formal termination notices to all 2,847 treaties they had signed with alien governments. The Galactic Communication Network, which had operated smoothly for 10,000 years, crashed within minutes. No one had ever seen so many messages sent at once. On the Marin home world, government officials woke up to find their inboxes flooded with cancellation notices, trade deals worth trillions of credits gone in an instant. On Beleli Prime, military commanders discovered that human peacekeeping forces were withdrawing from their borders. The soldiers who had kept the peace for decades simply packing up and leaving. The chaos spread like fire through dry grass. Dr. Choi Hannah watched the reports coming in with a small smile on her face. They still do not understand, she said. They think this is about hurt feelings. They think we will calm down and come back. Let them think that. Admiral Tojo replied, it will make the next part easier. The next part was the real weapon, not ships, not missiles. Something far more powerful. For decades, humanity had been the galaxy's quiet supplier of quantum fuel. This was the substance that powered faster than light travel. Without it, ships could not jump between stars. Without it, galactic civilization would grind to a halt. Most species did not know where their quantum fuel came from. They bought it from trading companies who bought it from other companies who bought it from refineries that were owned by humans. The supply chain was long and complicated, and nobody had bothered to trace it back to its source. Dr. Hannah had made sure of that. Shut it down, Admiral TJO ordered. All exports effective immediately. Within hours, the fuel stopped flowing. Ships that were scheduled to depart found their tanks empty. Cargo vessels carrying food and medicine to distant worlds were stranded at stations. Military fleets could not move. The Beleli Empire was hit the hardest. Their entire economy depended on trade, and trade depended on ships, and ships depended on fuel they no longer had. Their stock markets crashed, riots broke out in their cities. Their government declared a state of emergency. The Marin Dominion fared a little better. They had relied on human engineers to maintain their orbital stations and shipyards. Without those engineers, systems began to fail. Life support, artificial gravity, communication arrays, one by one, the machines that kept their civilization running started to break down. Chancellor Ezrin tried to contact Earth. She sent message after message, each one more desperate than the last. She apologized for the insults. She promised to restore human voting rights. She begged for a response. Earth sent nothing back. The silence was total and complete. On the council station, Veltus paced back and forth in his quarters. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to himself. "They cannot do this. They are nothing. They are insects." But the reports on his screen told a different story. Every hour brought news of another crisis, another system failing, another economy collapsing, another government begging for help that was not coming. Delegate Cuth visited Veltus late in the night. The big alien's green face was pale with worry. "I have been studying the humans," Core said quietly. "I found something disturbing." "What?" Veltus demanded. "During the border wars 30 years ago, the humans fought against the Voric Collective. Everyone remembers that the humans won, but barely. What they do not remember is that the humans were fighting with old ships and outdated weapons. Their newest technology never left Earth space." Velta stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that we have never seen what the humans can really do. I am saying that for 60 years they have been hiding their true strength. I am saying that we may have made a terrible mistake." Beltus wanted to argue. He wanted to say that Cora was being foolish, but the fear in his chest had grown stronger since the humans walked out of the council chamber. It was no longer a small feeling. It was a cold hand gripping his heart. Somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships were gathering. Human scientists were activating machines that had been built in secret. Human soldiers were preparing for a war that might never come, but that they would certainly win if it did. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. Now the galaxy was learning that some jokes have consequences, and the punchline was just beginning. 3 days had passed since humanity went silent and the galaxy was falling apart. On Belel Prime, the great trading houses had closed their doors. Ships sat empty in harbors that had once been busy with activity. The economy had crashed so hard that the currency was now worthless. People traded food for water and water for shelter. The government blamed the humans. The people blamed the government. Nobody knew what to do. The Maran Dominion was in even worse shape. Their orbital stations, the pride of their civilization, were failing one by one without human engineers to maintain them. The complex systems that kept them running had begun to break down already. 2 stations had been evacuated. 3 more were on the edge of disaster. Chancellor Ezrin had not slept in 2 days. She sat in her private office on the council station, staring at a screen that showed nothing but static. Every channel she tried to reach Earth on was dead. Every message she sent disappeared into the void. "They cannot ignore us forever," she whispered to herself. "They must respond eventually." But the silence continued. Then on the morning of the 4th day, every screen in the galaxy suddenly lit up with the same image. It was the flag of Earth, blue and green and white, spinning slowly against a background of stars. A voice spoke calm and clear in every language. "At once, citizens of the galaxy, this is Admiral Park TJO of the United Earth Fleet. For 60 years, humanity has been a quiet member of your community. We worked hard. We asked for little. We accepted insults and mockery with patience, hoping that one day we would be treated as equals. That day never came, so now we must show you who we really are." The image changed. It showed a massive shipyard hidden in the asteroid belt of Earth's solar system. Thousands of ships floated in neat rows, their hulls gleaming with technology that no alien had ever seen before. "You believed our ships were slow and weak. Admiral TJO continued, "You believed our weapons were primitive. This is what we wanted you to believe. The truth is different." The screen showed technical data that made scientists across the galaxy gasp in shock. Engine designs that were centuries ahead of anything known, weapons that could crack planets like eggs, shield systems that could stop any attack. The humans had been hiding all of it. Dr. Choi Hannah appeared on the screen next. Her face was calm, her voice steady. 25 years ago, my team discovered a way to collapse stars. We built a weapon that can turn any sun into a black hole within hours. We never told anyone because we hoped we would never need to use it. She paused, letting the words sink in. But hope is no longer enough. Across the galaxy, military commanders stared at their screens in disbelief. Politicians called emergency meetings. Scientists ran calculations and found that everything the humans claimed was possible, more than possible, it was real. The broadcast continued with footage of human technology in action. Ships that moved faster than light without using jump gates, soldiers wearing armor that made them nearly impossible to kill, robots that could build entire cities in days. Veltus watched from his quarters with growing horror. Everything he had believed about humans was wrong. They were not children. They were not primitives. They were predators who had been pretending to be prey. Why, he whispered, why would they hide all of this? Core, standing beside him, answered quietly, because they wanted peace. They knew that if the galaxy saw their true strength, everyone would fear them. Everyone would try to destroy them before they became too powerful. So they hid, they waited, they let us mock them while they prepared for the day when hiding would no longer be possible, and we gave them that day. Belta said bitterly, we pushed them too far. Eth agreed, we did. The broadcast ended with Admiral TJO speaking one final time. His face filled the screen, his eyes hard and cold. We do not want war. We have never wanted war. All we wanted was respect. You refused to give it, so now we will take it. You have 72 hours to decide what kind of neighbors you wish to be. Choose wisely. The screens went dark. At the edge of council space, a single ship appeared. It was the S Horizon, commanded by Captain Ru Jin, but it was not the old, battered cruiser that everyone remembered. It had been completely rebuilt. The Horizon was now a monster of metal and fire. Its hull was covered with weapons that hummed with terrible energy. Its engines glowed with power that should have been impossible. It hung in space like a warning, silent and deadly. Captain Ru Jin stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main view screen. He was a young man, only 35, but his eyes were old. He had seen too much death. He had fought too many battles. He was tired of fighting. Sir, his first officer said, we are being hailed by 17 different governments. They are requesting communication. Jin shook his head slowly. No response. Let them look at us. Let them understand what they are facing. Sometimes silence is the loudest message. The Horizon did not move. It did not attack. It simply existed, a reminder that humanity was no longer hiding. The other ships that patrolled the area kept their distance, afraid to get too close. On Earth, Ambassador Kim Yuna watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Governments were panicking, markets were crashing, people were demanding answers that their leaders could not give. Do You think they understand now, she asked. Admiral Teju, the old soldier, stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. Some of them do, others will need more convincing. I hope it does not come to that, so do I. TJO replied, but if it does, we are ready. We have always been ready. That is the real secret we kept from them, not our technology, not our weapons, our patience. We waited 60 years for them to treat us fairly. When they refused, we had already prepared for every possible outcome. Yuna nodded slowly. Then we wait a little longer, 72 hours, and then we see what the galaxy decides. Outside the window, Earth spun slowly in. The darkness, blue and beautiful and more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The countdown had reached its final hours. 72 hours had felt like an eternity to some and like a single heartbeat to others. Across the galaxy, leaders argued about what to do. Some wanted to apologize immediately. Others refused to bow to what they called human threats. The debate grew louder as the clock ticked down. Chancellor Ezen called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The great chamber, which had been filled with laughter just days ago, was now heavy with fear. Diglett whispered to each other in nervous voices. Nobody was joking anymore. You must reach out to Earth. Ezrin said, her voice tired but firm. We must apologize for the insults. We must offer them whatever they want. The alternative is too terrible to consider. Velta stood up, his 4 eyes blazing with anger. You would have us crawl before these creatures. You would have the great civilizations of the galaxy beg for mercy from beings who were living in caves when our ancestors ruled the stars. I would have us survive. Ezrin replied coldly. Pride means nothing if we were all dead. They are bluffing, Veltus insisted. They must be bluffing. No species could hide that much power for that long. It is impossible. Kor shook his massive green head. I have studied the data they released. It is real. Every calculation I have run confirms it. The humans could destroy us all, and there is nothing we could do to stop them. Then we strike first, Veltis declared. We gather every ship we have, and we attack Earth before they can react. We burn their world to ashes and end this threat forever. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates looked horrified. Others looked thoughtful. The idea was monstrous, but fear made monsters of everyone. Erin raised her hand for silence. I will not authorize an attack on Earth. If anyone wishes to do so on their own, they will do so without the support of this council. Velta smiled coldly. Very well. The Moran Dominion needs no permission from cowards. We will teach the humans their place ourselves. He walked out of the chamber, his advisors hurrying behind him. Within hours, the Moran fleet began to assemble. 3,000 warships gathered at Nexus Point, a strategic location on the border of human space. It was the largest fleet the Moran had ever put together. Admiral Tahoe received the news calmly. He stood in the command center of Earth's defense network, surrounded by screens showing the positions of every ship in the sector. The Moran fleet appeared as a cluster of red dots, growing larger as more ships arrived. How many do we send? General Li Desong asked. 200 should be enough, TJO replied. Des frowned. 200 against 3,000. Trust me. Captain Ru, Jin led the human fleet. Horizon flew at the front, followed by 199 other ships. They were outnumbered. 15-1, any observer would have said. They were flying to their deaths. Two fleets met at Nexus Point, the Morin. Ships spread out in a massive formation, filling the view screen with points of light. The human ships formed a tight wedge, small and seemingly vulnerable. Veltus commanded his fleet from his flagship, the pride of Mora. He looked at the tiny human force and laughed. Is this all they send? 200 ships. They are even more foolish than I thought. He gave the order to attack. The Morin fleet opened fire. Thousands of weapons discharged at once, sending beams of energy and waves of missiles toward the human ships. It was enough firepower to crack a small moon. The human shields absorbed everything. Not a single ship was damaged. Then the humans fired back. Captain Jin watched from the horizon's bridge as his fleet unleashed weapons that had never been used in real combat before. Beams of pure white light cut through Morin ships like knives through paper. Missiles that could not be stopped or deflected found their targets with perfect accuracy. In seconds, hundreds of Morin vessels were reduced to burning wreckage. Continue firing, Jin ordered quietly. There was no joy in his voice, only duty. The battle lasted for hours. It was not really a battle. It was a lesson. The Morin fleet fought bravely, but their weapons could not penetrate human shields. Their ships could not outrun human missiles. Every tactic they tried failed. When it was over, 3,000 Morin ships had been destroyed. The human fleet remained intact. Not a single human had died. Veltus survived. His flagship was crippled but not destroyed. He drifted in space, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet, staring at his screens in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The mighty Morin Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space, had been completely defeated by a force 115th its size. The humans had proven that they were not bluffing. Cord immediately, he sent a message to Earth offering the unconditional surrender of the Belethor Empire. He apologized personally for every insult he had ever spoken. He promised to support whatever terms humanity demanded. Other governments followed his example. Within a day, 43 species had sent messages of apology and offers of peace. Nobody wanted to be the next Morin Dominion. On the Morin home world, people watched the footage of the battle. In horror, they had trusted Veltus. They had believed his promises of victory. Now their fleet was gone. Their soldiers were dead, and their civilization stood on the edge of ruin. The anger came quickly. Crowds gathered outside the government buildings. They demanded answers. They demanded justice. When Veltus returned to his world, he was arrested by his own council. They blamed him for the disaster. They needed someone to punish. The execution was quick. As he had lived, proud and unrepentant, his last words were curses against humanity. Nobody listened. Ambassador Kim Yuna returned to the Galactic Council chamber 3 days after the battle. She walked through the same doors she had walked through so many times before. But this time, everything was different. Every delegate in the chamber stood as she entered. Thousands of beings rose to their feet in silence. There was no laughter. There were no jokes. There was only respect, hard-won and long overdue. Yuna walked to the center of the chamber and stopped. She looked around at all the faces watching her. Some were afraid, some were ashamed. Some were simply relieved that the fighting was over. She did not smile. She did not gloat, she simply nodded, once accepting what they offered. Humanity is ready to talk, she said. Let us begin. 1 month had passed since the Battle of Nexus Point. The galaxy had changed more in those 30 days than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The signing ceremony took place in Seoul, in the same building where humanity had first decided to withdraw from all treaties. It seemed fitting that the new beginning should happen in the same place as the end of the old ways. Leaders from across the galaxy traveled to Earth, many of them setting foot on human soil for the first time. They expected to find a primitive world. They found something else entirely. Earth cities reached toward the sky, towers of glass and steel that made even the most advanced alien architecture look simple. Flying vehicles moved through the air in perfect patterns. Parks and forests covered the spaces between buildings, green and alive. It was beautiful in a way that many visitors had never imagined. They hid everything. Chancellor Ezin whispered as her transport flew over the ocean toward Korea. It's not just their weapons, their entire civilization. Her aide nodded quietly. There was nothing to say. The new treaties were called the Seoul Accords. They covered everything from trade to military cooperation to scientific exchange. But the most important part was simple. Humanity was now recognized as a Tier 1 civilization, equal in status to the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They would have a permanent seat on the council leadership. Their vote would carry the same weight as anyone else's. General Lee Dae-sung gave a speech at the signing ceremony. He stood before the gathered leaders, his uniform covered with medals from wars that humanity had fought alone. His voice was steady as he spoke. We never wanted this, he said. We never wanted to reveal our strength. We never wanted to fight your fleets or watch your soldiers die. All we wanted from the very beginning was respect. We asked for it politely. We earned it through service. We waited patiently for you to give it freely. You refused. He paused, looking out at the faces watching him. Let this be a lesson, not just for you but for everyone who comes after. Never mock a younger species because they seem weak. Never assume that because someone is quiet they have nothing to say. The universe is vast and full of wonders. Some of those wonders are dangerous. Some of them are sitting right next to you, waiting to see if you will treat them as friends or enemies. He stepped back from the podium. The chamber was silent. Dr. Choi Hannah spoke next. She announced that Earth would share some of its technology with the galaxy, not the weapons, not the military secrets, but the quantum fuel refinement techniques that could help struggling worlds rebuild their economies, medical technology that could cure diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries, agricultural methods that could feed hungry populations. This is not charity, she explained. This is partnership. We will help you because we want good neighbors, not servants. We will share what we have because that is what equals do. But know this, our generosity has limits. Test them and you will discover exactly where those limits are. The treaties were signed, hands were shaken, pictures were taken. The leaders of the galaxy stood together, smiling for cameras that broadcast their images to trillions of watching beings. It looked like peace, for now it was On the council station of Celestine Prime, workers installed a new monument. In the main plaza, it was a statue of Ambassador Kim Yuna carved from white stone that seemed to glow in the artificial light. She stood alone, her head held high, facing a semicircle of 46 empty chairs, the plaque at the base. Read, she stood when they laughed. Yuna herself visited the statue a week after it was unveiled. She stood before it for a long time, her face unreadable. People passing by recognized her. Some stopped to bow, others simply nodded. With respect, nobody laughed. Nobody would ever laugh at her again. It looks like me, she said to Admiral TJO, who stood beside her, but it feels like looking at a stranger. That is because you have changed, TJO replied. We all have. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. The question is whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. I hope it is good. I hope this leads to real peace, real friendship, but part of me is afraid. Afraid of what? Yuna was quiet for a moment, afraid that they will never truly accept us, afraid that they are only pretending to respect us because they fear us, afraid that the moment we show weakness, they will try to destroy us again. Tahoe nodded. Slowly, those are wise fears. Keep them. They will help you stay sharp, but do not let them consume you. We did what we had to do. Now we must live with the consequences. The S Horizon resumed its patrols along the old border zones. Captain Rugin had been promoted to Commodore, but he still commanded the same ship. He felt at home on the horizon. It was the only place where things made sense. The regions that humans had once protected as peacekeepers were now protected by humans as partners. The difference was subtle but important. Before, humans had served under the command of others. Now they led. Other species sent ships to join their patrols, flying alongside human vessels and formations that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Jin stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide past on the view screen. His first officer approached with a report. The Moran government has requested human advisors to help rebuild their fleet. She said they want to learn from us. Jin smiled slightly. The universe has a sense of humor. A month ago they wanted to destroy us. Now they want to be us. What should I tell them? Tell them yes. Tell them we will help. That is what we do now. We help on Earth. Admiral Park TJO stood at a window in his office, looking out at the planet below. Ships moved through the orbital stations, human and alien working side by side. It was a new world, a new era. He had helped build it, but he was not sure if he would live to see what it became. His aide entered quietly. Sir, is everything all right? TJO did not turn around. Young officer asked me today if we went too far, if we were too harsh, if we should have tried harder to make peace without showing our teeth. What did you tell him? I told him that we showed them exactly who we are, not conquerors, not victims, just humans. That was always enough. They simply needed to see it. He turned away from the window at last. His face was tired but peaceful. For 60 years, we waited for them to recognize our worth. They never did, so we stopped waiting. We stopped hiding. We stopped hoping that kindness alone would earn us a place at the table. He walked toward the door, ready to face whatever came next. And now he said quietly, they will never forget us again. And GT, outside. And GT, the stars burned bright and endless, and Humanity sailed among them at last, not as children, not as servants, but as equals. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Whether it would remember that lesson was a question for another day. But today, for the first time in 60 years, Earth could be proud, not because they had won a war, not because they had proven their strength, but because they had finally, after all that waiting and suffering in silence, earned the respect they had always deserved, and that in the end was enough.